When asked to go to camp and dig ditches, were you aware of what the camp was?
I knew what it was, yes.
And were you told?
Our company commander asked for volunteers. We had heavy equipment. And we had drag line that's mounted on a crane, and that's what we dug the ditches. We were sent there to dig ditches because the people in the town said they didn't know nothing about how this camp was operated. Like they couldn't believe this, and we didn't believe them. So the military police went and got the people that was able-bodied people out. We dug the ditches with a drag line. The people from the towns carried the bodies and put them in the ditches and covered with the hand shovels. And this went on for about 3 days.
So this was over 50 years ago.
Yes.
And I know that you've not been able to talk about, you've kept this inside you, and what made you come forward?
Because today, I don't know how many, but there's a lot of younger people that think this is propaganda. It didn't happen, but it did, and I saw it. I know it.
Okay, so when you went into Mauthausen, what exactly did you see?
We saw prisoners crying, laying on the ground, dead, some walking around, wouldn't weigh 60 pounds, a huge man, maybe 60, 80 pounds, nothing but
skeletons.
Skeletons, walking skeletons. We saw bodies piled up beside the barracks like cordwood, dead bodies. And these were the bodies that we made the civilians put in the ditches, and we dug. And even when they were taking those bodies out, they found some of them still alive in there.
How big of an area was that of bodies?
Oh, I would say, well, the length of the barracks, probably 40 foot long, and maybe 6 or 8 feet high, thousands of bodies. And that they hadn't had a chance to get cremated. And they were cremating in 2 places. There was a big home or hotel or something in
it was like
Hartheim in Linz, that they converted that into a crematorium. And they had 3 or 4 ovens going in Mauthausen. And they had 2 satellite camps nearby, Gusen at Ebensee, and they were cremating there. And the people in these towns said that they didn't know what was happening, and you couldn't help it, though, the smell of the odor in that area.
What did the inmates do when they saw you pulling up in tanks?
They cried, and they hugged, begged. They were so glad to see us. Some of them just couldn't hardly go. We were told, some of the guys started throwing candy to them, and they had to stop right away to kill them.
Because their stomachs had shrunk?
Their stomachs were shrunk up. They started, the medics come in right away, the medical attachment come in right away, and they started feeding them, and this is hard to believe, with a teaspoon of soup at a time. That's all they could handle. And if you, at that time, everybody smoked. You throw a cigarette butt down, and 3 or 4 of them would kill each other to get that butt. They thought it was food. And they were like, actually like dogs that were starved to death and didn't know any better. And
I know in the book that I was reading, it said that so many, or the prisoners that were able to would walk the 5 or 6 feet outside the gate and drop dead.
Right, drop dead right
because
there.
At least they were free.
They were free.
So how long were you at Mauthausen to dig these?
I think 3 days. This was over 50 years ago, and it's hard to remember. But we had two backhoes out there. Myself, and each backhoe was mounted on a portable crane, a truck. And we had one guy that drove the truck, and I run the crane, the backhoe. We had 2 of those. And the fellow that drove the truck for me was from Pigeon, Michigan, and he's dead now. But he didn't die. He was alive, but he died about 3 years ago. Him and I were friends for years.
So
he had to move the truck as you dig the ditch. You move the truck forward along.
And who put the bodies then in the grave?
People from the town of Mauthausen were brought out there, and they carried the bodies, put them on a wagon or a cart, carted them out to the trenches, put them in the trenches, and covered them with shovels.
Now, did they have any like contact with you? Did they like act in disbelief?
They kept saying, we didn't know, but we knew better, because those troops, those prisoners were marched through that town each and every day, 7 days a week. At daylight, they were going to the quarry, and then dark, they were coming, just before dark, they were coming back from the quarry. And even the ones that died at the quarry, they had to bring the bodies back, because the German had to have a correct count. And there'd maybe be 15 or 20 dying, and the other prisoners had to carry them back.
Dead.
And the people were looking out these windows, and they had to know what was going on.
I know, I often use an analogy of since I've been reading this book, it would be like if General Motors plant here was the concentration camp, they had to march into Lake Orion. Wouldn't somebody in the houses on each side of the street,
they would know
that these people in these striped uniforms, something was going on. They would smell.
I can tell you another reason why they would know. Sometimes some of those people would go out and offer them an apple or something, these prisoners, and the guard would say, hey, drop that apple or you go with them.
So fear.
Right. And the people would go back in their homes. So they knew, and that, you can't tell me that didn't spread like a wildfire. They knew. There was no way in the world they could not know it.
But yeah, a lot of them,
and a lot of
even
people
today,
in the
have not
too.
come forward.
No, they don't. No.
They still have denied it.
No.
One of the things in this quarry was the steep steps going down to the quarry.
185 steps.
185 steps.
And they made 8 trips per day.
Carrying.
From 20 to 40 pound slab of marble on their back. And if they didn't get all the way up the steps, they were shoved in the pit, killed.
But then carried back up.
Carried back to the camp. They had to count the bodies.
Okay, now when the Germans got wind of that the Russians were coming, the Americans were coming, they had to get rid of these bodies. So that's how they established. And there were so many they couldn't.
They couldn't. There's no way they could do it.
Okay, we do have pictures of the equipment that you used and the crane and everything and how you dug the trenches. But do you have any contact with any survivors of the camp?
Yes. Sam Offen. Sarisny and Offen first store in Birmingham. I don't know Sarisny, but Sam Offen is part owner. He come to this country in 1951, and he was in this camp the day it was liberated. And he was one of those with nothing but bones. I think he said he weighed 70 pounds, and Sam's a pretty big man. Sam had 63 members of his family, of which 3 lived, and the rest were killed. He had 2 brothers that were younger, and they were kept because they could work. His father and his mother, his aunts and uncles and sisters, and the rest of them were killed. Most of them at Auschwitz. They were transferred from Auschwitz. Sam and his brother were transferred from Auschwitz, I think it was in January of 45, because the Russians were coming and they didn't want the Russians to get them. You know, the Germans didn't. They transferred them by train part of the way, and they walked part of the way in the winter to Mauthausen. And this is about 800 miles. And Sam, I think I gave you a letter from Sam and his brother, and they explained in there that the train would stop, and they'd maybe give them a pail of water, and maybe throw in a loaf of bread for 100 men.
What did the barracks look like? They
were looked like actually like a chicken coop, except roof slanted on both sides. And a chicken coop, usually the old ones had one angle. And they were like, and they had rows of bunks, and like I said, that's a long time ago, but they were at least 4 high and 5 wide, and there was no bedding of any kind, just boards. They slept on the boards. and an aisleway just long enough or wide enough for a man to walk through. And I think it was 4 or 5 rows of those, the length of those barracks.
Was there any ventilation?
No,
or?
just windows. They had some windows, but they clear up to the top, so they couldn't get out, and they could open a window.
And they had no mattresses or
No mattresses.
blankets or no personal effects?
Nothing, only what they had on their back.
And when you went in there, you did know that it was a concentration camp?
We absolutely did.
And one of the main activities was for the quarry. You knew that?
Yep.
Now, when you went in there, were you told anything of what their nationality or religion was?
No, we knew from, we had seen Buchenwald and a couple other camps on our spearheads. We didn't stop, but we had seen them, they were marching down, walking down the road for miles. You'd see row after row of prisoners that had been liberated. And we knew that they were mostly Jewish, but there was others in there too. In fact, there was a couple Americans in there.
There's a couple Americans. Now, were they called political prisoners?
No, they were combat air pilots.
Oh, that were captured.
Captured.
And put, because
I never talked to them, and I know they said there was 2 of them. One of the guys in our outfit talked to them.
Now, were there any guards around when you?
Oh yeah. No, not when we liberated.
They were
one old man.
Did he admit to being a guard?
No, he said that they'd left him there to look after things.
And were there any women or?
There was 4 or 5 women that were healthy, and
were they German?
I don't know, and I've never none of us have ever found out. And Sam often said he remembered them, but he don't know what they were there for. But I've got my ideas what they were there for.
So, when you decided to come to start talking about this at the 50th anniversary, I guess, of this, who?
Before the 50th anniversary, they contacted me through Army records. They knew through Army records who was in, I mean, not by name, but what divisions and what outfits were involved. And like I say, there's very few of my outfit alive, but I was one of them, and they wanted to know if I would, and I lived 4 miles from the Holocaust, and I'd never been there. And they wanted to know if I'd come and talk to them. And I told them, I talked to my wife, and yeah, sounds like, you know.
You mean the Holocaust Museum in Farmington?
West Bloomfield.
In West Bloomfield.
And so I went and talked to them, and they asked me if I would make an oral history. And I did, and I'm glad I did. And since then, I've been several times over there to talk to. They bring kids from school classes, you know, and then bring them through. And there's always a few in the class that well, it might be, but if you can talk to them and tell them you saw that, you know. I had one man, a young man. I'm a buyer for a food co-op, non-profit food co-op, and his girlfriend belonged to our co-op. And he was in there one day, and I didn't know him, and I didn't know, but somebody had, one of the other fellow old guys and I were talking. This was after I'd made that history. And he came over and said, I understand you made a history. I said, yeah. He said, who do you think you're kidding? There's 6 million Jews. How do they know how many Jews were killed? And they have some rabbi there standing counting them? That's the kind of people we have today that we have to know that it happened.
That is one of the reasons that we are doing this tape, along with the Holocaust Museum, because you are the last generation that was an eyewitness to this.
And that's one of the reasons I'm here talking to you, because it has to be known that it can happen, and it can happen again if we don't watch our step.
Did you have any lasting effects from?
Oh, sure, it bothered me. I didn't talk about it for years, and now when I look back, it bothers me. Not physically, but mentally.
Can you give us a brief summary about what happened to your unit after Mauthausen?
Oh, that's kind of a funny story too. I don't know if everybody knows, but if you had 85 points in the Army in Europe after the war was over, he was eligible to be discharged right away. And I had 123. You had a point for each year of service, a point for each child, and a point for each citation, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I ended up with 123 points, and we had some guys that had been transferred into our outfit to replace the fellows who were killed, and had 70, 80 points. And they said, well, you guys are lucky. We were sent, for a while, we was at Landshut, Germany, and we took, they had us hauling knocked out tanks and things back to Nuremberg so they get them all one place. Then they took the ones with the high points and took us up near Le Havre to the cigarette, what they call cigarette camps. We were going to be sent home, jolly, and be discharged. And it ended up the guys with the less points were on their way home to be reformed and go to Japan. The war ended in Japan. They got home before we did.
Let's show your discharge papers.
That's my
Do you have a
honorable discharge.
Your
sure.
discharge
Yeah.
papers.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can pull into this one, I don't know, but anyway, let's tell the.
Want me to read what's on
read what's on there.
Well, it gives my name, of course, and my Social Security number, my Army number, 3653-5120. That's pretty good memory, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
299th Engineer Battalion.
Put your hand down here so we can
that was the outfit that I was discharged with. We were transferred to that outfit for discharge. September, Camp Atterbury, Indiana. So on Elmer Stoll is my mailing address in Orion. My birthday's January 22. Incidentally, I was the first baby in Michigan in 1922. That's why my middle name's Henry. Henry Ford sent my mother a layette. Oh. Anyway, that's beside the point. Eyes are blue, hair is brown, gray now, but it was brown then. Height and weight. This is October 13th, 1942 when I went in. And it says here, foreman of construction. That was my title at the time. Carbon, I was expert. Rifle expert. My what I call battles. Southern France, Normandy. I'll explain that later. Normandy, Northern France, Ardennes, Rhineland, Central Europe. The Southern France, believe this or not, there was 10 of us pulled out after D-Day. There was 10 of us pulled out, put on a boat, and taken around to southern France to help with the invasion there. And we was there 2 days and brought back.
You were a busy fellow, weren't you?
Busy man, yeah. My ribbons was 6 Bronze Stars, Good Conduct, Medal, Croix de Guerre, which was, like I told you before, I got for a job in France, and they all kissed me on both cheeks. And the bronze arrowhead for the initial assault on Normandy. And anytime you see the bronze arrowhead, it had to be before noon on D-Day to already get that. And we were at 6 o'clock in the morning. So.
Okay, as a follow-up, what happened after World War II about your schooling and...
I got my diploma, what, GED they call it, and went back to work with General Motors. I went through the tool and die trade, training, got that. At Fisher Body, Pontiac, they closed the press room there, and I transferred to Pontiac. I went to Indiana first for a month. I said I didn't want to move down there. I wanted to stay here. I come back, and I sat around the office for about 5 weeks. I was an assistant superintendent of metal room. And they transferred me to Pontiac Motors. So you can't. That's here. You can't leave. So I went over there as a foreman, and ended up as a general foreman in Pontiac Press Metal.
I also understand that you and Betty were married on a furlough, and you didn't see your.
I didn't see my son till he was 13 months old, and we were married in March of '43. And no, that wasn't my last furlough. I come back in Thanksgiving time. And apparently that's when all these things happened. And he was born in September.
Well, Dick, I want to thank you for this interview, and this record will be a historical record available for educational purposes at the library. And as another person, it's been a pleasure and an honor to speak with you and take your history. And at this time, before Memorial Day and everything, I think I, along with everybody else, salute you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.